Welcome, crossover report. Three guys, one mic. Monday morning after a full week of the NCAA tournament. First and second round have been completed as expected. A lot of upsets, like there always is in March, but it seemed like everybody knew that this would probably be the year with there's been so much parity in college basketball. Nobody really head and shoulders above the rest. A lot of the higher seeded teams, a lot of 2 seeds and 3 seeds went down, 4 seeds, 5 seeds. A lot of upsets. Going to kind of give our thoughts on the tournament to this point. As always, Paul Lamb, Nick Damiani, myself, Neil Doyle. So jumping into it, obviously a lot of upsets in the first round and along with the second round. 2 of the number 2 seeds are out of it. All of the number 1 seeds still in. Some upsets along the way. Got to mention probably early in the going, my Purdue went down. Damiani over here predicted
Wasn't
that one.
wasn't really an upset.
I got to give credit where credit's due. There's been a lot of fun games, to say the least, too, as there always is in March Madness. But, I mean, this year it just seems like pretty much every game going down to the wire. It seems like a trend of teams really not being able to close out games come late. I mean, we've seen it in I don't know how many games in the first 2 rounds. But a lot of that happening. I don't know. Maybe let's jump into. I don't know if what you guys want to give some thoughts. Anything that's maybe surprised you in the first 2 rounds. Maybe a team that lost, and I think an obvious one that a lot of us would think, but maybe a team that lost in the early going that really shocked you or an upset in the first 2 rounds that kind of sparked your guys' interest. Paulie?
Well, obviously you alluded to Michigan State. It was disappointing on all fronts. Middle Tennessee State was not even good. Michigan State laid an egg. But I think one thing that was surprising, or that I kind of noticed in the first 2 rounds, that I actually wrote an article about. I'm sure you guys didn't read it this morning. But that there's not, I appreciate that. There's not, like last year, there's not great teams, which is fine. Like there's great competition. It's been really exciting. But last year you think we had Wisconsin with Kaminsky and Decker. We had Duke with Tyus and Jaleel. And we had Kentucky with Towns and Cauley Stein and all the rest of them. I think we're missing that this year, and I think we're just missing 2 big powerhouses play each other. So while you have all these upsets and stuff, like Gonzaga beating Seton Hall, that's not an upset. Wisconsin beating Xavier, that's not like a crazy upset. It's upset because it's a lower seed being the higher seed, but it's not out of this world. So the upsets have been great, great competition and everything. But nobody's really jumped out to me as being head and shoulders above everybody else.
I actually hate that when Paul keeps saying that in all these articles. I keep reading about it. I don't want that powerful team like there was Kentucky last year, because I'm looking at a team like Kansas now who just played UConn in the second round, and I wanted to watch that game because I felt like there was a chance UConn could at least win it. I couldn't even tell you who Kentucky played last year in the second round because I probably didn't watch more than the first 5 minutes of it because they kicked their ass. And then you even look at the next round, they get Maryland probably. You're right, it's Maryland. And who did Kentucky play their third game? We still don't know. They didn't have a competitive game until Notre Dame.
Did you watch Syracuse and Middle Tennessee State? Don't lie to me.
No, I didn't. No. I'm talking about the ones. You're talking about the top teams.
Michigan State and Syracuse? I would have watched it.
I wouldn't have watched that. I watched Michigan State and Middle Tennessee. I liked Middle Tennessee.
Down the line, it's just not. It's good basketball, but it's good games. But it's not great basketball. It's not great teams playing each other.
You think they're all playing poorly? You think they're playing bad basketball?
I think it's a level below basketball than we saw last year. I think those 3 teams I named earlier would have walked through this tournament.
Oh yeah, they would have. I don't know if it's bad basketball. I think everybody just plays to the competition right now, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's nothing against. I mean, if you're still competing in this field, if you win this championship, it's still a championship. I'm just saying.
But it's like you kind of knew last year that Kentucky was at least going to make it to the Final Four. You knew Wisconsin was probably going to be there too. It was just too easy to predict. I don't like that. I like some uncertainty in these games. It makes you want to watch them more.
I understand that. I mean, you're wrong, but
like you said, it's been that type of tournament where it's been a lot. I mean, I think a lot of people expected with the season that we've seen in college basketball, how many of the top teams have been going down, and like we've said, there's really not a team or two that's head and shoulders that we could have really. I mean, there's maybe a few teams, a team like a Kansas, maybe a North Carolina, that a lot of people thought Michigan State was a for sure bet to the Final Four. But there's really not a lot of teams this year, a team or two that we can really put as a lock into the Final Four. Like we said, that Kentucky team last year, I think everybody knew they were going to get to the Final Four. And that's what we've seen. I mean, I think that Michigan State loss was huge. I think what was it? I mean, close to 50% of the people that filled out brackets on ESPN had them in the Final Four. It was 60%. I'm sorry, looking at it right now. I mean, 98% of the nation picked them to win that first round game. I mean, and
That was dumb.
I give credit to the 2% that even picked Middle Tennessee. I mean, that's got to be Middle Tennessee State fans, true and proud right there to pick them in the bracket. But I mean, I think that was the biggest shock that I've seen in a while, especially with how well Michigan State was playing coming into that game. I mean, they just came off a Big Ten tournament championship. I mean, they were playing some of their best basketball, I thought, at that point. But it was just like we've seen. I mean, they weren't able to ever get going in that game. And so many games we've seen so far in the tournament, a lot of teams losing leads. I mean, you look at my team in Purdue, had 14-point lead with 4 minutes left, lost that. A game just yesterday, Northern Iowa had a 10-point lead with a minute left to play in
30 seconds, bro.
Could have upset Texas A&M and could have made it to the Elite Eight. They blew that game, lost in overtime. We've seen so many teams give up leads a lot in this tournament. But it's been a fun tournament to say the least. Still a lot of the top teams, as we said, 4 of the number 1 still in it. Michigan State and Xavier losing last night to Wisconsin, so those 2 seeds are out of it, but still Villanova and Oklahoma in it as the 2 seeds. So still a lot of the teams that were, that people thought, teams like Kansas, North Carolina, Oklahoma, who are for sure kind of people thought bets to get to the Final Four are still in it. Michigan State being that lone team that is knocked out. Who in your guys' mind, then, looking at the field where we're at right now, Sweet 16 starts this Thursday, or a few of the games, Thursday, Friday. Who in your mind is the strongest team right now, maybe reassessing the field? Who do you like right now, looking at these 16 teams left? Nick, I mean, who do you think is the number 1 team right now? Is it still Kansas in your mind?
No, I never really was big on Kansas. I do think they have a really tough game with Maryland. They probably have the toughest game of any of the ones coming up here. But I would still like North Carolina. That's my champion. They got Indiana. Indiana played a really good game against Kentucky in their last one. So that game does scare me. But let's say they get past Indiana, then it's going to be either Notre Dame or Wisconsin in the Elite Eight. So they have almost a free – I'm not going to say it's a free pass because it's March Madness. You never know what can happen. But for them to be playing a 7 or a 6 seed, and that game is just ridiculous. And they're playing great basketball right now too. Like, the whole team's clicking. They're not one-dimensional with one player. Everybody, they got just so much going on with them. So I'm going UNC.
Paulie?
Yeah, I'm between UNC and Oklahoma, but I'll talk about Oklahoma since Nick talked about UNC. I think Buddy Hield has been unbelievable. He's kind of got off the slow starts, but you look at their game the other day against VCU, he had 29 points in the second half. He just kind of took over. There was a stretch of like a minute where every possession, all 3 or 4 possessions, he came down, he just drained a 3, and it was no questions asked. He's really asserting himself as he's going to win Player of the Year. Now that Denzel Valentine didn't get far enough, Ben Simmons is ineligible, Tyler didn't get far enough, it's going to be Buddy Hield. And I think he's shown that they have a tough matchup against the Texas A&M team. They've battled throughout the season. I think they played probably this season. I don't really know. But yeah, I've liked Oklahoma. I think they're going to keep on going.
I agree. I have Oklahoma as my champion also, so they're still in it. I'm going to stick with my gut. I still think Oklahoma is the best team in my mind. Kansas obviously playing some really good basketball, along with North Carolina, who a lot of people think those are probably the 2 best teams left. I like Oklahoma. I just think their ability to score the basketball. Only won by 4 against VCU in their game, but I thought VCU would give them a good game. VCU, still a pretty good defensive team, and they're a little bit different this year in that they can put up some points. So I think that's why that game was a little bit closer with the Sooners. But I just think Oklahoma, having the best player in the country in Buddy Hield, and that team just so much dynamic, able to hit the 3. I think they're going to be able to get past Texas A&M, and I still think they're the best team in this tournament just because of their offensive ability. So I'm sticking with my gut in the Sooners, but a lot of people looking at it, I mean, a lot of people think that North Carolina might be the best team, but like you said, they've got a tough game against Indiana. Kansas and North Carolina probably have 2 of the tougher ways in. I think, Kansas having to play Maryland, possibly then Villanova or Miami. Like you said, North Carolina, Nick, if they get past Indiana, maybe a little bit of an easier game between Notre Dame and Wisconsin and, the other teams, as we've said. But maybe another thing to touch on, 6 ACC teams still left in this tournament. Is that at all shocking to you? ACC has been a good conference the last few years. A lot of people thought that the Big 12 was going to be the conference this year to maybe have some more teams come to tournament, come late. Are you guys surprised at all that there's so many ACC teams still left in the tournament? Or did you thought maybe a different conference would have more teams left in it at this point? Nick?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be Big 12 dominated this year. I thought they played such a tough schedule throughout the year that this was going to be a cakewalk for them in March. I guess Baylor showed that with one of the first games of the day that they weren't ready for Yale, apparently. And then kind of what you said about the ACC team still in it, Duke didn't have to play Baylor in the second round, so Duke got to play UNC something, and then they got to play Yale in the next round too. So, yeah, it's surprising, but I guess the ACC is playing well. Duke impressed me a little more than I thought they would. Granted, they haven't played anybody yet, but they're still playing good basketball. It seems like this year is such a shootout type year. Nobody seems to be playing any type of defense, and it just seems who's going to score the most points is going to win it this year. Like the Purdue Little Rock game, I don't mean to bring it up, though, but I do mean to bring it up. But I think they scored 73 points in that game. That was a double overtime game. That was like one of the lower scoring games.
85. Just to be
85? Was it 83?
85, 83 was the final.
83 then, 83. But
That's
there's been teams scoring 90. That's 2 overtimes it took them to get there. So that's the slowest pace game in there. But then I think Kansas scored 100 their first game. Granted, crap teams. But I just think that this is a year tailored more towards offensive teams than a defensive team. That's why I think Iowa State could realistically win their next game. Who's the 1 seed over there? Virginia. I think they could beat Virginia. Virginia's more of a defensive team. Iowa State's a lot more offensive. I think that it's just more of an offensive type year, and that matters more to have better offensive firepower. That's why you guys like Oklahoma, Buddy Hield. We don't really talk about Oklahoma as a defensive team. We talk about their whole team as shooters and scorers and all that. So I think it matters more this year to have a team that can score than defend.
Well, and like we were saying, with those 6 ACC teams still left, Paul, I mean, but when you do look at it, Nick did mention the one team in Duke who has kind of had an easier path playing a team in UNC Wilmington and then didn't have to play Baylor in that second game. And a lot of these ACC teams have kind of had that path. Miami didn't have to play the higher seed Arizona. They beat Wichita State. Notre Dame, same thing. They would have had to play a team in possibly West Virginia. West Virginia got upset by SF Austin. And then the same thing for Syracuse, who probably would have been playing Michigan State, but ended up playing Middle Tennessee. So does the ACC deserve the credit for having, this many teams still left, or was it more, do you think they kind of got lucky in the teams that they're playing? They didn't have to play the higher seeds, got to play the teams that upset teams in the first round?
Well, I think it's almost that, not that it hurts them more, but you got SF Austin coming in with the momentum. You had Yale coming in with that momentum against their team. SF Austin played Notre Dame tight. I mean, they were winning, right?
Yeah.
Yale was beating Duke too. So I don't know that it necessarily benefited the ACC more to play those lower seeds. Now, I did not want to see Duke in the Sweet 16. I sure as hell did not want to see Notre Dame in the Sweet 16. But they had tough matchups, and I think that they kind of, I don't know. I don't think it hurt them necessarily, or I don't think it was easier for them necessarily.
And then going in, I mean, that was one thing I found a little bit interesting. I think like a lot of people thought that the Big 12, it was probably going to be their year, but those teams in the early rounds, Baylor, West Virginia, who I think a lot of people expected to get farther in this tournament, got upset in that first round. And, I think you still got to give credit to these ACC teams. You still got to go out and march and win games, regardless if you're playing, a higher 11 or, 14 seed that might have upset a team in the first round. Those teams are playing good basketball. So, and like you said, a lot of those teams had a chance to win. Duke was losing. SF Austin was beating Notre Dame, but, they prevailed and they've made their way to the Sweet 16. So you have to give the ACC credit where credit is due. And then kind of touching maybe, who's maybe a guy that you guys have seen in this tournament. And, there was a guy in SF Austin that's been getting a lot of media hype, but obviously they lost. Even a guy that might have, been knocked out of the tournament to this point that maybe surprised you with his play in the tournament, or a team that might still be left in it that's got a guy that's really just, playing great basketball in March right now. Nick, anybody that stands out in your mind?
You go to Paul real fast.
I think Zach August has been playing really good for Notre Dame. I don't have the stats on it, but I know that first game against Michigan, he was blocking damn near everything, and I'm pretty sure he played well against SF Austin. Notre Dame has kind of carved themselves a path to the Final Four. They got Wisconsin, who they can beat. They have UNC, who they have beaten. Now, granted, last time they played UNC, they got their asses kicked. But I think Zach August is a big reason that Notre Dame is kind of where they are and has a chance at going farther.
For me, I'm looking at a team in Gonzaga, a guy Domantas Sabonis who's had a double-double in their first two games. At 21 and 16 against Seton Hall, and I think a lot of people thought that Seton Hall team would play a lot better coming into this tournament. But Gonzaga, and then in their last game, last night against Utah, it was Sabonis again at 19 points, 10 rebounds. A guy that can kind of stretch the floor a little bit, but just so good down in the post. Really just played well against Podol of Utah the other night. And I think it's really surprising because Gonzaga the last few years have had some better teams. I think just last year they were the one, or was it the year before that? And they really haven't performed well in the tournament. Mark Few finally has his team to a Sweet 16, and they're kind of lucky. They're playing Syracuse, who's been playing good basketball, obviously. But I mean, Gonzaga's looking like they have the reality of getting to an Elite Eight for the first time in who knows how long. And, honestly, playing either a team in Virginia or Iowa State, realistically, Gonzaga couldn't make the Final Four, and I don't think anybody really thought that this would be the Zags team to do it compared to some of the teams they've had the last few years. But Sabonis has really been a big help for them. They've got another guy, a great player in Kyle Wiltshire, but Sabonis is a guy that is going to be able to get you points down low, and he's doing it really productively. He's shooting close to 55% in his two games in the tournament. So Sabonis, a big reason why the Zags are in the Sweet 16, and I really think it's a reality that they could, win this game against Syracuse on Friday and really have a chance to possibly make the Final Four, which I would not have asked Gonzaga, this team, to do that compared to teams in the past. But Sabonis, my player to really watch so far in the tournament. Nick, anybody stand out to you, or you got no one for us?
I got you. Brandon Ingram, Duke. Great first game, got to the basket at will. I was not big on him. I think Paul's been big on him for a while now. He just didn't look good to me at the beginning of the year, but he's had a really nice second half of the season. He impressed me. I didn't think he had that good ball handling. He did a nice job getting to the basket in his first two games. He scored over 20 points in both those games. He's almost turning into more of a primary ball handler for Duke, who doesn't really have a true point guard. He switches off with Grayson Allen, but he's really long and he looks good in these games, and I think he's a good player to watch. I think he could jump Ben Simmons in the first pick. We were talking about that the other day. That's getting realistic. Nobody's getting to watch Ben Simmons play basketball right now. So whatever he does basically from here on out can only really improve his stock, it seems like. And I think that's something big to watch.
Yeah.
Ingram definitely getting it going here, and especially like you just said, with Simmons not playing basketball right now. I mean, people say that GMs, some of them look at play in March, some of them don't. They look at more of the body of work, but I think definitely still being in this tournament, getting to show the skill set he has. And I think just in these past two games, we've kind of seen a different player in Brandon Ingram. So I like that pick also. And then I know my Final Four is not intact anymore like a lot of other people's with Michigan State losing. You guys had Michigan State in the Final Four also, right?
Yep.
You did too, right, Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the only reason I had them, I thought they had a weak region, and I didn't know who to pick out of that one. Michigan State wasn't a good team this year. They were not good.
I think the rest of us have the other three regions still have our teams in. So, all right, let's give just a quick prediction of then who we still think. I mean, obviously, with the three of us still having our teams on the other regions, I have Maryland. Paul, did you have Maryland, right, or did you switch it? Or you had Villanova?
Yeah, I have Villanova.
And then, Nick, you have Kansas, and then you have North Carolina coming out, Nick, right? All of us have
North Carolina, yeah.
Then all of us have Oklahoma coming out of the West region. So then if all of us having Michigan State out of the Midwest region, looking at, who's left, who do you guys think comes out of the Midwest region, possibly out of the Final Four?
I'm going to jump to that.
It's either Virginia,
Iowa State. I like Iowa State. I like Monty Morris. I think he's been playing really good for him. He's a big X factor. I mean, Yang's going to do what he can do, but if Monty Morris can play big like the guard play needs to in March, unlike what Purdue did, they didn't have the guards to get through.
I agree.
Monty Morris. And I think they can beat Virginia. I'm not big Virginia guy.
I think Iowa State can get past Virginia. And I really like this Gonzaga team. I don't know. I'm going to go on the limb and say Gonzaga might come out of the Midwest region as the 11th seed. I think that just with all the upsets that we've seen, I think you have to have some type of high seed make the Final Four with all these crazy upsets. So I'm going to go Gonzaga coming out of the Midwest, and then all those other teams that we have originally in our Final Four. That's who I had. Paulie, who do you got coming out?
I like Iowa State too. I'm a big George Niang fan. I think people don't talk about him enough. He should be top 5 in voting for Player of the Year, like 5th, but like he should be top 5. I think he should be a lottery pick too in the draft. He's so good offensively. He's not very fast, but like he's shifty as hell.
I agree. So, as we said, first 2 rounds over. Sweet 16 starts this Thursday. Miami, Villanova, and then it's Texas A&M, Oklahoma, followed by Kansas, Maryland, and then Oregon, Duke. All play on Thursday. That's all the teams on the left side of the bracket. And then on Friday are the rest of the teams over on the right side of the bracket play. And then what the Elite Eight is, I believe, then
Saturday.
I'm sorry, the Elite Eight is then Saturday, Sunday, and then the Final Four that following day. So a lot of basketball still left. It was a fun first week of the tournament. I know pretty much everyone's bracket busted. With that Michigan State, is there anybody left on ESPN? I haven't even looked. Nobody, right?
I don't think anybody got the first round.
Yeah. So, not shocking because of that Michigan State loss, so many others. But it's been fun. It's March. It's what everybody expects. You got to expect the upsets. And not surprising at all this year because of all the parity we've seen in the game. But still a lot of basketball left to be played. All of that coverage will be right here for you on Crossover Report. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at Crossover Report. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to us right here on YouTube. And you can visit us, crossoverreport.com. So any final thoughts from you two before we end this video from the first 2 rounds? Anything else? Paulie, Nick? No? Good? I don't know. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the games. I know Paulie had some opinionated articles about it.
It's all right.
I'll tell you. If I don't win the Crossover Report Challenge, I'll cut my hair.
Yeah, Crossover Report Challenge is going. I believe, who's in the lead of that? Is it Emilio still?
Emilio and then I think Jack.
Emilio and Jack Doyle, but they both don't have their champions.
Yeah, both of them lost.
Vulnerable.
So both of them lost their champ, which could hurt because you still get the points for getting teams to the Final Four and championship, which are big. So check your standings. If you're in the Crossover Report Challenge on ESPN, you can check where you're at. But yeah, Emilio Garza down here at ISU, good friend of ours from Marion, and unfortunately my brother Jack Doyle up in the lead somehow. But those two
stories.
Check where you're at the Crossover Report Challenge. I think that's going to do it for us. We'll have plenty of coverage still with all the games this weekend, the Sweet 16, Elite 8. Do some more videos for you, our thoughts on that come the Final Four and the championship game. I want to thank you for watching. As always, Nick Damiani, Paul Lamb, myself, Neil Doyle. Thanks for listening. 3 guys, 1 mic, Crossover Report. We'll see you next time.